All right, Steeler fans, it's time for the mailbag segment where you, the listeners, the Ride or Die crew, get to ask me the questions. And this is obviously something I enjoy doing every single Wednesday, second half of the show. All you got to do is find me on Twitter X. You don't have to follow me. You don't have to do anything else there. I put out the tweet at jhartman, HARTMAN_PIT. You see it, you respond. I answer the question on Wednesday. Let's get the show on the road. Believers with the Ride or Die crew poll of the week. Here we go. The Steelers will win a Super Bowl in the next. Here are the options. 1 to 3 years. 4 to 7 years, 8 to 11 years, and not in my lifetime. So I said 4 to 7 years. They got to figure out the quarterback position. But some people said not in my lifetime, and some people said 1 to 3 years. If it's 1 to 3 years, I'm all for it. If it's not in my lifetime, please, come on. Like, I want to see him win another one. And I'm going to be 42 years old, but I want to see them win another one. My gosh, I got a lot of years left. Good question, though. Next, let's go to Jeff Coons, our buddy from up north. He said, I enjoyed your Monday podcast with the fan from Ireland. Please let me know if I can contribute to a Monday conversation with a fan from Canada. I promise to talk about more than punters. So before we go any further, before I get to Jeff's actual question, let me say this. I had someone in the comments on YouTube. In YouTube, I put out the Monday morning conversation on our YouTube channel, typically later in the afternoon on Monday. And someone said, boy, like, this is so stupid. Why are you doing this? Listen, like, what else is there to talk about right now? I mean, yeah, we're talking about potential free agents and stuff like that coming up. I mean, my gosh, like, this is a big deal for these people. And people are like, this is stupid. This is stupid. Come on, lighten up, people. Okay, just lighten up a little bit. We're all trying to just provide good content. That's literally all we're doing. But here's Jeff's question. What goes into planning a Pittsburgh draft party for the Ride or Die crew in April of 2026? Venue, timing, sponsorship, special guests. Is this like planning a wedding? Do you have a logistics team? Who would be your dream guest at the event while you're in town? All right. So this is something that you probably do want to start planning like a wedding. Looking that far ahead, they have already selected the appropriate dates. Where are you going to have any type of watch party if you're going to have one? That's step one. Once you have the venue, you have to say, okay, we're going to do it here, but what's it going to be? Like, what is it? What is the draw? Well, what is going to be special about this? Okay, well, we would have to talk with our people here at Steel Curtain Network. Who's going to be there? Come and watch the draft with us. Be there as the Steelers selecting. Maybe we would have people on the shows and the live stream, whatever. Could you get someone else to come in and maybe do the show or do the whole event with you? Now you're bringing in sponsorship ideas. Would people want to be the sponsors? Would they want to front some money to get their name on stuff? What would we do? Could we get a former player to come on board and to be a part of the process? There's a lot of different things that go into this. We're just starting to look into this. A lot of people are wondering about this year's draft, and I've already been in discussions with some other people at FFSN about what that's going to look like. We'll be into. We'll let y'all know. That's all I'm going to say is we'll let y'all know. All right, let's go to the next question. Plain and simple. Maddie said, howdy from Atlanta, Jeff. Hope the week is treating you well. 2 questions. First, what do you think has kept the Steelers and Rooney from improving their training rooms and facilities for players, specifically at a training camp? Do you think they'll ever move on from sharing with Pitt, too? So that's a great question. And they have not put this out yet. Typically, it's right before free agency that the NFLPA releases their grades. And it says the Players Association wants to let players who are free agents know what they're about to get themselves into as it pertains to the way the players are treated. So that's why they do it when they do it. So that should be coming out soon. I think that the Steelers, they do have to lean on the fact that they share a weight room, they share a practice facility with the University of Pittsburgh. I don't think the University of Pittsburgh is leaving that facility anytime soon until they were to ever get their own stadium in town. And I don't see that happening either. So this is just kind of one of those things that if the Steelers really wanted to say, look, we need to just start fresh, we need to start new, the Steelers would have to build their own facility, not a stadium, their own facility somewhere else. Like the Pittsburgh Penguins is in Cranberry. Maybe they'd have to go out on the outskirts of town to build a facility that is, the latest and greatest in everything. And then that would be some of the upgrades that would look for. That would be a lot of money. I don't know if they're willing to pay for it. That's just my own opinion. All right. Lastly, are you rooting for a Pickens trade to get draft help for 2026, potentially trading up to get a quarterback that year? Or do you see a scenario where they keep him and still are able to do everything on the checklist and help and add the help they need around him? They absolutely have a scenario where they keep George Pickens on the roster, where he is there, where he is playing, and he might just be playing out as the final year of his rookie deal. And that's if no one's willing to trade for the guy and he's willing to show up and play and knows that he's going to get a shot at free agency after that, then yes, there is definitely, he doesn't cost a lot of money. He's a headache, but he doesn't cost a lot of money. You absolutely could still build around him. The one thing I wouldn't want the Steelers to do is to negotiate a long-term deal with the guy right now. I am not rooting for a Pickens trade. Am I okay if Pickens gets traded? Yes. Do I want him to get traded? Only if they get a good return. You know, if someone says, hey, we'll give you guys a third round pick this year and a conditional second next year, I would consider it. And you might say, Jeff, that's only a third round pick this year. What are you doing? Well, yeah, but that conditional second round pick, if you wanted to package it, you could do it. You could move it. So I'm not rooting for it. Let's make that very clear, but I'd be okay if it happened. All right, let's go to James. He asked another question, or he asked his first question. My apologies. Let's say that George Pickens happens to get traded. Let's also say he flourishes with his new team, both on and off the field. If that happens, what does this say about the Steelers? Were they simply done trying with him or incapable of reeling him in? Okay, to answer this question, I'm going to revert people to steelcurtainnetwork.com. You can scroll down through the articles, or you can click on any article that I wrote, my name, and you'll find the list of my articles that I've written. And you can go back to a letter from the editor. In that article, I talked about how important it was for teams to be able to balance character and talent when they acquire a player, whether it's trade, whether it's free agency, whether it's the draft. They have to be able to say, okay, they have the talent. The player has the talent. Someone like George Pickens has the talent. Character. Do they have the character? If the answer is no, the next question is, do you think that they could be kind of redirected, taught how to do things properly? Here's what it comes down to. Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, all these players, I'm going to leave Martavis Bryant out of it because Martavis Bryant, the dude just couldn't stop smoking weed. That's essentially what it came down to. You want to say that's on Tomlin, whatever. But Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown are the two players that everyone talks about when they talk about, man, like the Steelers could have had this, and the other. What you have to remember is that when Tomlin reined them in, when they were doing what they were supposed to, let's not forget they were winning. And they weren't just winning. It was those two players that were doing all the damage. They were getting, well, in Antonio Brown's case, he was getting paid handsomely. Le'Veon Bell, they tried, and he turned it down. When did things go south with Antonio Brown? Things weren't going his way. Juju Smith-Schuster was the one everyone was talking about. He got voted the MVP and not Antonio Brown. He starts to get pissed. Now, all of a sudden, he wants out. I guarantee you that if George Pickens played on a team like the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, he would light it up and he'd be the perfect teammate. Why? They're winning and he's producing. So I wouldn't say that if that were to happen, if George Pickens were to be traded and is successful, he would probably be fine if they're winning and he's being productive. It's just the way it works a lot of times in the NFL. All right, let's go to Cola Chris. He said, in your opinion, who would be the most likely wide receiver target for the Steelers, either in free agency or via trade? Well, I talked in the whole first half of this podcast about free agent options. I tiered them out. I said the top tier, I really like Darius Slayton. I like Amari Cooper. Second tier, I'd put Mike Williams in there. I would put I can't remember the others. You got to go back and listen. I'm sure if you did, you already heard this. But yeah, so I do have some players that I like. I trade, and that's all speculation. It's hard for me to even talk about that. All right, let's go to Eric. Do the Steelers draft a quarterback in the later rounds to develop, or do you think they hold off and draft a quarterback in the first round next year? I am not wasting a pick on a quarterback this year, unless you're like, hey, this guy's going to be a backup. You know, like a Chris Oladokun type, 7th round draft pick. You could have gotten him as a free agent possibly, but you don't want to, so you go out and get him in the 7th round. If it's that, that's fine. They've got a lot of 7th round picks anyways. But if they take a 3rd round pick on a quarterback or something like that, that doesn't sit well with me. You have to get the roster right. This roster is not right. So you have to go out and make sure it is right before you get that player. So I would be more inclined to them getting a quarterback in 2026, not so much in 2025. I've brought up the Mason Rudolph thing before. Why was Ben so pissed? It wasn't that they drafted a quarterback. It was when they drafted a quarterback, and it didn't make sense. That's why. All right, let's go to Brandon. He said, I think we can agree the three biggest needs are defensive line, cornerback, and wide receiver. Of these, which positions do you see the Steelers filling in free agency versus the draft? Having all this cap space gives us more options than we are traditionally accustomed to. And he said, hashtag, excuse me, Elm Grove ride or die. This dude is living where I grew up in the actual little cove of Wheeling, West Virginia. But nonetheless, so Brandon, great question. I saw someone on Twitter. I wish I knew who said it, but I don't recall. They said that they would approach this offseason for the Steelers saying this. What are the positions that are weak in the draft? Those are the positions that we go ahead and we try and fill in free agency. What are the positions that are weak in free agency? We're going to go and target those in the draft. I think that's a really good approach. And I think it makes sense. And I can't sit here and lie to everyone that's listening and say, you know what? Honestly, I can tell you that this is the weakness. I'm learning about these positions and these players as we go, meaning the NFL draft. Andrew Wilbar just did her mock draft for SteelCurtainNetwork.com. You can check that out. A full first-round mock draft. I'm learning about these players as I read these things. So I'm going to say that if I were to rank them, defensive line, give me a free agent. I think that they have good options in the draft as well, but I like free agents. Give me a veteran that's been there, done that. Think about Larry O and the production he had early in his tenure with the Steelers. Cornerback, go young. Give me a draft pick. I think that's a better course of action. Wide receiver, I think it's both. Defensive line is probably both too. All right, let's finish this up with some dad jokes. Steeler fan 69. He said, great show on Monday. Thank you very much. He said, the vet picked up my dog and said, I'll have to put him down. I said, why? Is he that sick? He said, oh no, just surprisingly heavy. And then last one, what did the Beach Boys say when they walked into a bar after a concert? Round, round, get around, I'll get around. Those never get old. All right, folks, that does it for me on this Wednesday podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. On Friday, we'll have Jeremy Jerome Betts on the All Bets Are Off segment, as well as a lot of other fun Steelers news and notes as it comes to fruition. So be sure to stay tuned to SteelCurtainNetwork.com and the Steel Curtain Network podcast platform for all your Pittsburgh Steelers needs. That does it for me. We finish these up. Be safe, be kind, and God bless. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you on Friday. Go Steelers.